Today is Thursday, August 26th, and welcome to the 8:30 show. I'm KJ, and every Thursday night you'll find me here at 8:30 p.m. on YouTube at Metro Conservative Media. Please hit the subscribe button. At the same time, I'm also live on Facebook at the Metro Conservative Media page. Please like our page and join the conversation by commenting on this video. We will respond to your comments throughout the show. Tonight, it's a serious and a very important night. Tonight, we are talking about Afghanistan. According to ABC News, a U.S. official confirmed that the 13th U.S. service member has died as a result of injuries received in the attack at the Kabul airport, the outlet noted. At least a dozen more American service members were seriously injured, including 11 U.S. Marines and 1 U.S. Navy hospital corpsman. Several service members are believed to be in critical condition. The U.S. fatalities were the first in Afghanistan since February 2020, when former President Donald Trump and the Taliban signed an agreement to withdraw U.S. troops from the country. The Week reported. The 13 troops killed today made the attack the deadliest since August 2011, when militants shot down a Chinook helicopter, killing 31 Americans, 7 Afghanistans, and a military dog, according to the Wall Street Journal. President Biden addressed the American people tonight during a press conference and said he bears responsibility for, quote, fundamentally all that's happened of late, end quote. But then went on to blame former President Donald Trump for the situation. He repeated his allegations that the Trump administration forced his withdrawal from Afghanistan on an abbreviated timeline, but neglected to mention that his own administration moved the timeline up after originally setting the 20th anniversary of 9/11 as the deadline for withdrawal. Tonight, I have with me Sam Faddis. He is a retired CIA operations officer, published author, and national security commentator. In addition to writing, speaking, and teaching, he consults for the U.S. military, U.S. government, and private industry. He is here to break it all down for us. How are you tonight, Sam?
I am doing as well as can be expected under the circumstances. A pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Well, we are going to get right into it. As you've heard me do the rundown, just a brief synopsis of what occurred today and what has been occurring within the last, I'd say, several weeks. I'll ask you right away, how did we get here?
Wow. Well, I mean, if you want to talk sort of how did we get to this point, looking back over the long term, I think we got here by making a lot of really poor decisions, right? So this is all obviously my opinion, right? Based on my experience. We went into Afghanistan after 9/11 because it had been used as a launching pad by Al-Qaeda for attacks on the United States. It was a safe haven for Al-Qaeda. And in the space of a matter of months, CIA teams, Army Special Forces, U.S. air power, allies, tribal allies defeated the Taliban, drove Al-Qaeda from the country, basically won the war in a matter of months. And then, as I think happened to us in Iraq and has happened to us in other places, instead of maintaining the focus on why did we go here and what were our objectives, we begin to, the mission morphs and broadens and evolves without, I think, a lot of coherent discussion. And now all of a sudden we take on the task of what they call nation building, right? That transform Afghanistan, which honestly only arguably exists as a country. It doesn't, the idea that we have of a nation state, which is really a European idea, doesn't apply to Afghanistan. They don't think of themselves that way. But I always say, the next thing you know, we're trying to turn Afghanistan into Switzerland and Central Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep piling down this road year after year after year. Not just more troops, but contractors. We're building roads, electrical power plants. We're trying to change the way the Afghans deal with, gender issues, right? So I would think most Americans would support the concept of gender equality. It's not necessarily an accepted concept in all of Afghanistan. In any event, we're now trying to force these attitudes on the Afghan people. This is no longer about stopping terrorism. Now we're taking on the task of changing this whole country. And that's, 20 years later, we're finally come sort of to the end of the road where it is very clear that, look, this was there may be a lot of admirable goals in there. I'm certainly not speaking against things like gender equality. I certainly think the Afghans would want to prefer to live in a more modern society, if that's an appropriate term. But the point is, I'm not sure that's really our job or our role or our place to do that. So, eventually you get to the point where you have spilled so much blood and spent so much treasure that the American people effectively are like, look, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to keep sending our sons and daughters to get killed. And we're not going to keep spending billions of dollars on a people that don't seem to really appreciate it. So, I agree generally with that. I think there are alternative ways we could have gone other than completely withdrawing. I think we could have returned to our original focus. But in any event, I think the consensus is we're going to leave. Unfortunately, and that's where we arrive.
Well, let me ask
the immediate issue right now, of course, is how we chose to get out.
Right.
That's the real rub, I think, right now, is what I would say is the complete incompetence displayed in how we are getting out of Afghanistan. That's the real rub.
And that's my question. So, can you walk us through when did we start to announce that we were going to withdraw? I know it was done under President Trump's administration, correct? We announced that we were going to withdraw.
Right.
Okay.
Well, in one way or the other, we've been talking about it and telegraphing that we're going to do it for at least a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And certainly there was a timetable announced before Donald Trump left the White House that we were committed to a so-called peace process with the Taliban and we were leaving. So yeah, we were on that glide path well before Joe Biden sat down in the White House. Then we're back to the question of, okay, we're leaving, but that doesn't really explain to me what is happening right now in Afghanistan. How is it that we are powerless, surrounded at an airport, getting ready to leave thousands of our citizens trapped in Kabul, abandoning military equipment to the Taliban? In other words, we can withdraw and it doesn't have to be a disaster, which is what I think is happening right now. It is a disaster.
Exactly. And that's what I want to get to as far as, so again, as you mentioned, and as I read earlier, we have people, and many in the news have used the term stranded. Would you define it as that? Because White House is not saying they're stranded. I mean, can you walk us through as far as what's going on the ground there and how you see the how this is all rolling out or playing out for people that are there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should add, by the way, that I was smirking a moment ago, and it's not because there's anything funny. It's because the situation is so absurd that it's one of those you don't know whether to laugh or cry kind of moments where it's just, it kind of takes your breath away. I mean, look, the administration has made all sorts of announcements, and by them, I don't just mean Jen Psaki and Biden. I mean the Pentagon as well. that have absolutely nothing to do with reality. Okay. The situation is not under control, was not planned. It is not somehow being handled. This is a disaster. It's a debacle. Pick your word. It's a nightmare for the most powerful nation on the planet with the military resources we have to be in the position we're in on the ground in Afghanistan is really unthinkable. In fact, I think it actually literally is taking people days to catch up because you keep thinking, nah, it can't really be that bad, right? We got all the troops and the planes and everything else in the world. We can't really be in this bad of a position because we got all the power we want. But we have done this so badly. Where we are now is we have, something like 6,000, 6,500 troops on the ground in Afghanistan at Kabul International Airport. Kabul International Airport is a one-runway airport, basically right in the middle of Kabul, surrounded by mountains or high ground on three sides. Troops are on the airfield, and you're talking something that isn't 2 miles across. On the other side of the wall are thousands of Taliban. So we have 6,500 guys surrounded in a tiny little area in the bottom of a valley surrounded by mountains by tens of thousands of fighters who have artillery, mortar, missiles. Well, and now they got everything that they just got from the Afghan army, right? So to start with, we're not guaranteed we're going to get those guys out. If we get them out, it will be because the Taliban lets them get out.
The Americans. I want to ask you, if I could stop you there. So why, before this, and correct me if I'm wrong, America was in charge, but now it seems that the Taliban is in charge. When did we lose the power there, or did we ever have power there?
No, I mean, I think your question is an excellent one. It gets right to the point. Look, we had just north of Kabul is an air base called Bagram Air Base. It was originally built by the Russians decades ago. It's a very large military facility, multiple runways, a very large, very defensible position they built specifically so it could be defended against hostile forces. We gave up that airbase, pulled out of all of our people, took our planes out before we started to try to evacuate our civilians. And so, I mean, it doesn't take a military expert to understand that doesn't make any sense. That's not the way. You don't have to be a 4-star general to figure out that's not the way you do this, is it? Don't you get all the civilians out first before you give up your air base, before you pull all your aircraft out? So this is just one example of the fact that this has been grossly mishandled. So we have a small army on the ground in Kabul, Afghanistan, in what the military told the president in their parlance is a militarily indefensible position. Basically, if the Taliban decides to attack, we cannot hold that position. It's not defendable. They were told that before Joe Biden put them on the ground. They told Biden that before he put them on the ground. They said, look, you put us in that position. If the Taliban decides to make an issue of it, we can't hold. There's nothing to hold. It is a tiny little trap. And then we're surrounded. There's no way to hold it. He did it anyway. We will be lucky to get those guys out. Taliban might let them out. It depends on what they think exactly will do if they start killing them in large numbers. At this point, we look so weak, they might just do that. The Americans that didn't make it to the airport yet, we're cutting away. So the State Department actually doesn't know what that number is. They don't know how many Americans are in Afghanistan. Now they're trying to claim that there's some relatively small number of people there, but they didn't know how many were there to start with. So therefore, obviously, it's impossible for them to know if they are anywhere close to getting everybody out. But in any event, we're picking up and leaving. The military is preparing to fly out, and nobody is going to get the Americans that are left.
So who are these Americans?
There's no effort.
That's what another question. Who are these Americans? When I think of Afghanistan, I definitely wouldn't want to go there. But I mean, who are these people that are left there, and why are they there?
Well, you have to. There are a whole bunch of people. I mean, some of them work for private organizations, NGOs, humanitarian organizations. A lot of them were actually contractors working on contracts funded by the U.S. government. Because anytime you ever looked at the number of soldiers in Afghanistan, that never counted at least as many contractors on the ground doing everything from security to name any job. And up until relatively recently, right, what was the president of the United States saying? He was saying there's no way the Taliban's going to overrun the country. The Afghan army will hold. It's secure. There's no possibility of a repetition of Saigon. You're good to go. So, yeah, maybe they should have had a crystal ball, but the point is they relied upon the assurances given to them by their government that, yeah, you can stay here and this place is stable. Then in the course of about 11 days, the place fell apart. And now this administration is literally just, I mean, if you didn't make it to the airport, you're gone, we're gone. I mean, in effect, evacuation flights have ended. From this point on, the only thing they're really doing is trying to get the troops out, because that takes days just to do this in a way that, every guy can't just walk over to a plane and get on the plane with the Taliban outside the wall. This has to be done in steps and so forth. So I say that, and I suspect that most people hearing me say that we're going to abandon American citizens probably causes almost like brain lock. Like, what are you talking about? Because no U.S. government in history has ever said, we're just going to forget American citizens on the far side of the globe and abandon them to a terrorist group. But that's what we're doing. It's completely uncharted, unthinkable territory.
Now, the press secretary, Jen Psaki, she keeps saying, we're going to get everyone out that wants to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, are there people there that don't want to leave, we believe? Or, I mean, what does that mean when she says that?
Well, so I was an intelligence, I've been a number of things in my life. One of them was an intelligence officer for a long time, as you indicated. In the intelligence business, we would describe that as a lie, right? That's all that is. That's just a lie. You're not getting everybody out that wants to get out. You're not trying to get everybody out. You don't even know where they are, and you don't know how many of them there are. And you haven't done anything in all the time that you've been there, as this whole thing is, unfolded like a slow motion train wreck to get him out. So don't tell me that. Look, there's a lot of stuff that is being said by this administration that is just flat out false. It's not, they don't know what they're talking about, or it's a little shaded, or whatever. No, it's just flat out false. Look, there were 2 bombs that went off today at Kabul airport, right? Killed a bunch of Marines, killed God knows how many Afghans. The Taliban says it's ISIS. The administration says they believe it's ISIS. Okay. ISIS is an Arab terrorist organization. Afghans are not Arabs. Maybe the average guy running around the United States thinks that everybody looks the same over there. I don't know. Afghans and Arabs are not the same people. They're not a bunch. You don't blend into Afghan society as an Arab. Kabul is under the control of the Taliban. It's under specifically the control of the Haqqanis, who are some of the most vicious, bloodthirsty guys on the planet. There are checkpoints on every corner now in Kabul where they're searching you. You can't move. There's no Arab terrorist organization running around inside Afghanistan that the Taliban can't find, can't control, that is carrying out attacks even though they're trying to stop. That is a stupid lie. Right? Like the Taliban, I don't care who the guy was wearing the suicide vest, and I don't care in what name they took responsibility for the attack. This is an attack by the Taliban, and the intention is to say, we told you to leave. It's time for you to get going. So there will be further attacks, and I suspect they will continue to lie for some time about who's perpetrating them. And I say the White House lies because the intelligence community has to know that. Right? They have to understand that that's a stupid story. ISIS is not running around in Kabul without the knowledge of the Taliban. If they're there, it's because the Taliban lets them be there. And the only thing they do is what the Taliban lets them do. This administration knows that. But if you say the Taliban bombed us today, then every right-thinking American like you and me and everybody else is going to say, well, then shouldn't we do something back to them? Shouldn't we retaliate? Right? They just killed a bunch of ours and we're just going to take it. So it's convenient for this administration to accept that lie, is what I'm telling you. They know it's a lie, and yet they not only accept it, but they repeat it to the American people.
Now, speaking of the administration, one thing President Biden said today, again, when I mentioned in the beginning, he talked about taking responsibility for what is going on, but then he also blamed it on the previous administration. Can you speak to that as far as what is he talking about as far as blaming it on the Trump administration, and is there any validity to that?
Well, I think what he's attempting to make a case for is, look, Trump was going to withdraw too. He was going to pull guys out. Anytime you're withdrawing, it's going to get messy. I'm just the guy that got stuck with the dirty part of this job. I'm just the guy who inherited this. All right. Yeah. I mean, is there a certain amount of validity to that he got stuck with the really hard part of this? Yeah. That doesn't explain what we've been talking about all of this time. You could pull all the Americans out, evacuate our people, and leave, and not end up in a situation where we're trapped at an airport and you're abandoning thousands of Americans. And by the way, look, I should add that when we got to the point where the Afghan military fell apart and it became clear we were going to have to do this evacuation under these kind of conditions, the military guys out of Fort Bragg down in North Carolina, who were tasked with being the central part of this operation, put together a specific plan. And that plan was go back in, take over Bagram Air Base that I was just talking about earlier, bring in enough troops and aircraft to do this right and securely. And then we will take our time to get our people out, and we will have the force on the ground to make sure that we get everybody out and nobody gets in our way. And the Biden administration explicitly rejected that. And that's when they said, if you make us operate out of Kabul airport, you're putting us in a trap, in essence. We cannot hold that. If they decide to make an issue of it, you just put us into Fort Apache. Use any analogy you want from whatever old movie you've ever watched. You have put us into a place that is a trap, and none of us may ever get out of there. And the Biden administration said, do it anyway. Now, I can't explain that to you. I mean, that's either incompetence on a scale we've never seen, or I don't know what it is, malfeasance of some kind. I've never heard of an administration acting that way.
My goodness. So we have this, the actual deadline is August 31st. Taliban has taken over Afghanistan again. Where do we go from here? What consequences do you believe we'll see from this going forward, in abroad and here in America?
Well, look, I don't want to take international relations and national security and turn it into kind of the equivalent of schoolyard fights, right? But I think we all, as a matter of human nature, understand how this works. If you project weakness, you get preyed upon, unfortunately, and particularly in the international scene, because there's no such thing as an international police force. When you are the United States of America and you appear to be weak, you are going to suffer consequences. You're going to get attacked. So we could have withdrawn our people from Afghanistan in a way that said, okay, we've decided to leave, but don't mess with us. You don't want any part of this. That's not what we have done. We have done this in such a horrifying way that we have told the whole world that if it's blood in the water is what I'm telling you. So it's jet fuel on the fire of Islamic Jihad. As far as jihadists are concerned, Osama bin Laden just won the 20-year war. Doesn't matter, he's dead. He's a martyr. So you have re-energized that entire worldwide jihadist network. And yes, you're going to have attacks on American interests, and they're going to be everywhere, including here. And then on top of that, you got folks that don't have anything to do with Islam, like the communist Chinese, who are going to look at this and say, in light of what I just saw in Afghanistan, what's the chance that Joe Biden would defend Taiwan? What's the chance that Joe Biden would come to help the Japanese? Any interest they have had in pushing the envelope and seizing the initiative, obviously for them now is the time to do it, because what was just, I mean, on an international scale, what we're seeing in terms of weakness and ineffect and just the incompetence, I think is probably unprecedented. I don't know when any American president has ever done anything this detrimental to national security. Even Jimmy Carter did not get to this level. So we're going to pay for it, and we're going to pay for it for years, unfortunately. I mean, people talk about ending the war. Well, we did not end the war. All we did was ensure that it goes on and that it's going to be fought places other than Afghanistan. I'm sorry that, because I'd like it to be over too, but it's, you know, I got a son who barely made it out of Afghanistan alive in the United States Marines. And a lot of his buddies did not, and a lot of my buddies haven't made it alive out of Afghanistan. God knows, I wish we could just end this whole thing and let's get on with our lives. We got better stuff to do than killing each other, but that's not what we just did. We didn't end anything.
Oh my goodness, it sounds like it's only the beginning.
It is unfortunately only the beginning.
One thing I want to ask before we leave, I do have a question. You know, some people are saying that former President Trump's administration released 5,000 Taliban prisoners as part of a peace agreement. Can you speak to that? Is that true? And so how did that interact or change this situation? Yeah,
well, I mean, a lot of the claims that are made about decisions that the Trump administration made, I think, are completely accurate. I think that they're, you know, listen, I think the idea that we were ever going to negotiate a peace treaty with the Taliban, turn the country over to the Taliban, and they had somehow evolved and changed, was always misguided. I said before, I don't think we should have ever been nation building in Afghanistan, but we could have kept a relatively small number of people there. We could have kept the place from turning into an Islamic super state. And there have been a lot of options on the table. So, you know, I'm pretty harsh critic, as is pretty clear, of Joe Biden and his administration. That does not mean I'm giving a pass to what the Trump administration did. I think there were a number of points at which they should have taken a different direction in this thing.
Right, but when you think about everything that has occurred, the way that this all played out, keeping in mind the 5,000 troops and things like that, this could have been avoided, right? I mean, it didn't have to end like this. One of the many lies that the Biden administration is telling, I think I referenced this earlier, is the sort of, there's nothing to see here other than the inevitable kind of mess at the end of a war. Yeah, it's a little messy, a little sloppy, but that's all it is. That is not at all what we are seeing. We are seeing, well, at a minimum, incompetence on a scale that I don't think we've ever seen before. I don't think we've ever seen an American president behave this way. I mean, we're literally about to put our troops on planes and fly them out. Let's assume, God willing, they all get out alive. And we're going to walk away from all the rest of the American citizens in Afghanistan, now under the control of the Taliban. We don't actually know what that number is, but the best estimates I've seen are somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 Americans. Wow. 5,000 and 10,000 Americans we're going to say we're going to forget about. Now, the other reporting coming out of Afghanistan is that as soon as we're gone, they are going to begin, they being the Taliban, seriously rounding up and massacring all of their opponents. Probably take down the internet, probably turn off the cells network and expel all foreign journalists so the outside world can't see. And then it's like the killing fields of Cambodia when millions of people disappear. That's how you solve your problem. You get rid of your opposition by literally killing them. We are about to leave 5,000 to 10,000 Americans in that situation. We're going to get on plane and fly away. And then Jen Psaki is going to keep telling you,
Well, the only people that are left there are a handful of individuals, and they all wanted to stay. That's a deliberate lie. And I don't think we've ever seen anything. I mean, the idea that a press secretary lies on behalf of a president, I don't think really shocks anybody. A lie that big and that monstrous, I think, is unprecedented, right? I mean, I can't think of a situation like that.
All right. Well, I mean, it's definitely, I don't even know what else. It's a sad situation. And we don't know how each day is going to go up until August 31st and even after that. But we will continue to watch that. I really appreciate you coming on tonight and giving us this information. I could have you on for 30 more minutes, but I know.
Well, I would just depress everybody for another 30 minutes. I was smiling here again, not because there's anything funny, but because I was thinking. Well, I always know I'm done talking when everybody in the room is totally depressed. But it's like, look, I'm just trying to tell you the truth. If there was good news, I would be the first guy to want to give it to you. I mean, it is really bad, and we haven't seen the worst of it yet. That's how sad it is.
My goodness. Well, I have one friend who talks about this, and he believes that this is the end of a superpower. I mean, he's gone so far as to say we are treading in territory we have not gone in before. Would you go that far?
I think your friend, I think your friend had his finger on something very important, he or she. It's like, that is the magnitude of the damage we have just done to American prestige. And, look, I'm not really a big fan of endless wars and intervention and all of this stuff. I've been to a few wars. I don't think we ought to be in nearly as much of a hurry as we are to get dragged into any more of them, right? I'm all for that. But the fact of the matter is the world's a dangerous place. And if you don't defend yourself, you are going to get victimized. That's reality. So we have suffered such catastrophic damage to our prestige and to our standing in the world. I mean, we've got allies that don't trust us anymore, and enemies that are just licking their chops. And that is a really, really bad combination. That's really dangerous.
All right. We will end on that note. So again, I thank you for joining us tonight. That wraps up this episode of the 8:30 show. We are all over social media under Metro Conservative Media. So please like, share, and leave a comment. And follow us on our Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter page. Also, check us out on our webpage at www.metroconservativemedia.com. We'd love to get your feedback. I hope to connect with you again next Thursday at the same time. I know I normally end each episode with wishing you warm days and starry nights, but tonight I want to ask everyone to end your night with a prayer. That's what we need right now, asking God to intervene in this situation, and just say your prayers tonight. Say your prayers and be thankful for your loved ones. All right. That's it for tonight. Good night.